Have you ever caught yourself doing something and realized it would have seemed completely unnecessary just a few years ago? Maybe you stand at the bottom of the stairs for a second before climbing. Maybe when you pull into a grocery store parking lot, you automatically look for the closest space instead of the first one you see. Or perhaps you step out of the car, pause for a moment, and let your legs wake up before you start walking. None of those moments feels dramatic. In fact, they're so ordinary that most people barely notice them. Until one day, a thought quietly slips into their mind. When did my legs start feeling like this? Almost everyone has the same answer. I'm just getting older. It's such a common belief that many people never question it. But what if the explanation you've believed for years is only part of the story? Researchers have uncovered something that surprises many older adults. Some people lose confidence in their legs long before they lose much muscle. At first, that doesn't seem possible. If the muscles are still there, why don't they feel the same? We'll come back to that question, because the answer changes the way many experts think about aging itself. But first, I want you to picture something. You're walking through your local grocery store. The cart rolls smoothly. You feel perfectly fine. You pick up a few things, turn into another aisle, and without warning, your legs begin feeling unusually heavy. So you stop. Not because you're interested in comparing cereal boxes, because you're quietly giving your legs a chance to recover. When they feel better, you keep walking as though nothing happened. Most people assume that moment has a simple explanation. It often doesn't. In fact, two people can experience that exact same moment for completely different reasons. One may have muscles that are gradually changing with age. The other may have muscles that are still capable of becoming much stronger. The difference isn't obvious. And that's exactly why so many people blame the wrong thing. Before we uncover those differences, try a small experiment the next time you stand up from a chair. Don't ask, "Can I stand?" Ask something much more interesting. How did I stand? Did you lean forward first? Push off the armrests? Rock back and forth once before getting up? Those tiny movements are easy to overlook. Yet they often tell a story long before your legs begin telling one. Here's something that puzzled researchers for years. People sometimes complained that their legs felt weaker, even though scans showed they hadn't lost very much muscle. That didn't make sense until scientists realized they had been measuring the wrong thing. We'll reveal what they discovered in a few minutes. Because once you understand it, dozens of everyday experiences suddenly begin making sense. But that discovery opened another mystery. If muscles aren't always the first thing to change, what is? Some experts began looking somewhere completely different. Not at the muscles, at the communication system controlling them. That investigation uncovered something almost nobody thinks about while walking across a room. Every step begins as an electrical message. Your brain sends thousands of signals every second through your spinal cord and into the nerves controlling your legs. Most of the time, the entire process happens so effortlessly that you never notice it. Until one small part of that communication becomes just a little less efficient. The muscles may still be there, but the conversation has changed. And that raises another question. If communication matters this much, why do some people stay steady into their 80s while others begin struggling years earlier? The answer has surprisingly little to do with determination, and much more to do with one ordinary habit that nearly all of us repeat every single day. We'll uncover that shortly. But even that isn't the hidden reason I mentioned at the beginning. Because there is another factor that can quietly imitate aging so convincingly that many people never realize it's happening. Sometimes it begins after a routine doctor's appointment. Sometimes it sits unnoticed in the medicine cabinet. And sometimes correcting it has nothing to do with building stronger muscles at all. We'll connect those pieces together later. For now, I want you to remember one simple idea. Your legs are constantly collecting information about how you live. Every trip to the mailbox, every staircase, every chair you stand up from, every walk through a grocery store. They're all teaching your body something. Whether that lesson is helping you stay strong or quietly encouraging your body to let strength go, depends on signals most people never realize they're sending. And the first one might be happening while you're sitting here watching this video. If you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing. Every week we explore the science behind healthy aging and turn it into practical habits that can help you stay active, independent, and confident for years to come. A few moments ago, I said your body may be listening to a signal you're sending right now. Most people assume that signal is exercise. It isn't. In fact, your body is paying attention long before you decide whether to take a walk or lift a weight. It's watching how you spend the ordinary hours in between. Think about yesterday. Not your workout. Your entire day. How many times did you stand up simply because life required it? To answer the door, refill a glass of water, put away groceries, walk to the mailbox, fold laundry, water a few plants. Now compare that to the hours you spent sitting. Without realizing it, you were teaching your body what tomorrow needs to look like. Here's the strange part. Researchers noticed that two people could take the same 30-minute walk every morning and still age very differently. At first, that didn't make much sense. Both were active. Both believed they were doing everything right. So what was the difference? The answer wasn't hidden inside the walk. It was hidden in the other 23 and a half hours. One person finished their walk, then spent most of the day sitting. The other kept finding small reasons to move. They stood while talking on the phone, walked to another room instead of calling someone, carried groceries one bag at a time, got up every hour without even thinking about it. None of those moments looked like exercise. Yet together, they created hundreds of tiny reminders that their legs were still needed. Your muscles don't only respond to effort. They respond to expectation. If your body expects another movement in 20 minutes, it prepares differently than if it expects another 3 hours in a chair. That's why one long walk can't completely erase an otherwise inactive day. The body isn't keeping score the way we do. It's constantly asking, should I keep investing energy in these muscles? Every time you move, you help answer that question. Before we go any further, try something tomorrow. Don't count your steps. Count your interruptions. How many times did you interrupt sitting on purpose? Most people are surprised by the answer. And once they notice it, they rarely stop noticing. But movement alone still doesn't solve the mystery we opened earlier. Remember this question. Why can two people move similar amounts, eat similar meals, live similar lives, yet one gradually becomes much weaker? For years, that puzzled researchers too. Then they discovered something unexpected. The muscles weren't ignoring movement. They were becoming harder to convince. Imagine knocking on a friend's front door. Years ago, one knock was enough. Now imagine that same friend has started wearing noise-canceling headphones. The house hasn't changed. The door hasn't changed. Your message simply has to be clearer before it's heard. Something similar begins happening inside aging muscles. Scientists call it anabolic resistance, but the name isn't important. The idea is, your muscles can still rebuild. They simply need a stronger signal than they once did. That explains something many people have experienced without understanding. Two friends eat nearly identical dinners. One maintains strength. The other slowly notices climbing stairs becoming more difficult. It isn't always because one person eats badly. Sometimes their muscles are simply responding differently to the very same meal. We'll come back to that, because it changes one common belief about protein that almost everyone gets slightly wrong. But first, there's another clue hiding in plain sight, and it has nothing to do with food. Imagine you catch your foot on the edge of a step. You don't fall. You laugh. Maybe no one else even notices. By evening, you've forgotten about it. Or have you? A week later, you reach that same staircase. Without thinking, you hold the handrail. A few days after that, you choose the elevator because you're carrying something. Later, you park a little closer to the entrance. Not because you have to, because it simply feels easier. None of those choices seems important. But together, they begin telling your brain a quiet story. Maybe we should avoid situations like that. Researchers see this pattern often. The body doesn't suddenly become weaker. Life gradually becomes smaller. And here's the irony. Many people believe they're protecting themselves by moving less. Sometimes they're accidentally removing the very signals that help preserve strength. That doesn't mean pushing through pain or ignoring medical conditions. It means recognizing that confidence and movement are partners. When one begins shrinking, the other often follows. Fortunately, that relationship works in both directions. One smoother sit to stand. One comfortable trip through the grocery store. One afternoon when the stairs don't feel quite as intimidating. Those small victories begin changing expectations too. Your brain starts trusting your legs again. And your legs receive another reason to stay ready. Notice what we've uncovered so far. The story isn't just about muscles. It's about expectations. The expectations inside your muscles. The expectations inside your brain. And the expectations you quietly build through everyday experiences. But there's still one mystery we haven't solved. If all of this is happening correctly, why do some people still develop heavy, tired, or unsteady legs? The answer isn't where most people look. In fact, one clue often appears before the weakness itself. And once you know what to watch for, you'll understand why the timing of your symptoms can matter even more than the symptoms themselves. Up to this point, we've uncovered something most people never realize. Your legs are responding to far more than age. They're responding to how often you move, how clearly your muscles receive rebuilding signals, and even how confident your brain feels asking them to work. But none of that explains one of the strangest experiences people describe. Maybe this has happened to you. You wake up feeling fairly normal. You get dressed, walk to the kitchen. Everything seems fine. Then 20 minutes later, you're walking through a store, and your legs suddenly feel much heavier than they did when you left home. What changed? Most people assume the muscles simply became tired. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes your muscles aren't the first thing asking for help. Something else spoke first. And the clue is hidden in when it happened. Here's a challenge for the next few days. Don't simply notice if your legs bother you. Notice when. Is it always after climbing stairs? halfway through a walk, late in the afternoon, after sitting for a long time, or perhaps around the same time each day. Most people have never looked for a pattern. Yet patterns often tell a much bigger story than individual symptoms. Let's go back to the grocery store. You make it through the produce section. Everything feels normal. By aisle 6, your legs begin feeling unusually heavy. You stop beside the cereal shelves. To anyone else, it looks like you're deciding between two brands. In reality, you're quietly waiting for your legs to recover before continuing. If that scene feels familiar, don't jump to conclusions. Many different conditions can cause it, but it does illustrate something important. Sometimes the problem isn't that your muscles can't work. It's that they're not getting everything they need while they're working. Which brings us to another discovery. For years, experts focused mostly on muscles themselves. Then attention shifted to something feeding those muscles. Blood flow. Your muscles depend on a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients. If circulation gradually becomes less efficient, the earliest sign isn't always pain. Sometimes it's simply needing more frequent pauses than you once did. Not because you've suddenly become weak, but because your muscles are asking for a little more time to catch up. That's why when the heaviness appears can matter just as much as the heaviness itself. Now let's return to another mystery we opened near the beginning. Remember when I mentioned that some people lose confidence before they lose much strength? Researchers eventually realized something remarkable. The conversation between your brain and your muscles goes both directions. Most people think the brain only sends commands. It doesn't. Your feet are constantly talking back. Every step sends thousands of tiny messages telling your brain exactly where your body is, how firmly your feet touch the ground, whether the surface is smooth, uneven, soft, or slippery. Your brain uses those messages almost instantly to adjust your balance. Here's the surprising part. Many people expect nerve problems to begin with pain. Often they don't. Sometimes the first change is uncertainty. You glance down at the curb instead of stepping confidently. You hesitate on uneven grass. You instinctively reach for a railing that you never used before. Those moments aren't always about weaker muscles. Sometimes they're about receiving less reliable information. Imagine walking through your home during a brief power outage. The furniture hasn't moved. Your legs haven't changed. But because you're receiving less information, you naturally become more careful. Your body often behaves the same way when those sensory signals become less precise. Before we continue, here's another simple observation. The next time you put on your shoes, notice whether both feet feel equally aware of the floor. Does one side feel different? Do both feet sense the carpet equally? This isn't a diagnosis. It's simply the kind of detail people often remember only after someone asks. And details like these can become valuable clues during a medical visit. Now there's still one mystery we've deliberately left unanswered. Earlier I mentioned that sometimes the reason weak legs seem to appear all of a sudden has nothing to do with muscles, nothing to do with circulation, and nothing to do with nerves. It often begins somewhere much more ordinary. A routine refill, a medication adjustment, a new prescription. We'll connect that piece next. Because once researchers began looking at timing instead of age alone, they discovered something that changed how many clinicians evaluate sudden changes in walking and balance. And it explains why blaming everything on aging can sometimes send people searching in exactly the wrong direction. Throughout this video, we've been following several different clues. At first, they seemed unrelated. A slower response when standing up. Hours spent sitting without realizing it. Muscles that no longer react to food the way they once did. Confidence quietly shrinking after one awkward moment. Changes in circulation. Changes in nerve signals. Even medications that can sometimes imitate aging. Now the pieces finally fit together. The real story isn't that your legs suddenly become weak. It's that your body slowly begins receiving different instructions. And your body is remarkably good at following instructions. Which brings us back to the question we've been carrying since the very beginning. Why do two people with almost identical health sometimes have completely different futures? Researchers expected the answer to be strength. It wasn't. They expected it to be exercise. It wasn't that either. The biggest difference often came down to something much harder to measure. The signals each person kept sending their body, day after day. Think about two friends in their 70s. Neither belongs to a gym. Neither runs marathons. Neither would describe themselves as particularly athletic. But their weeks look very different. One continues living in a way that quietly tells the body, these legs are still important. Walking to the mailbox. Taking the stairs when it's practical. Standing while talking on the phone. Working in the garden for 15 minutes. Getting up every hour during a movie. None of those actions seems impressive. The other person slowly lets convenience make more of the decisions. Groceries are delivered. The elevator replaces the stairs. Television replaces the evening walk. A chair replaces the garden. Again, none of those choices seems important by itself. But the body doesn't judge individual days. It responds to patterns. And patterns become habits. Then habits become abilities. Now here's something that genuinely surprised researchers. For years, many believed stronger muscles automatically created more movement. But newer research has suggested that the relationship often works both ways. Sometimes movement itself comes first. A few small successes encourage someone to move a little more. That extra movement gives muscles and nerves another opportunity to adapt. Confidence begins growing, which leads to even more movement. The upward spiral begins. In other words, people don't always become active because they feel stronger. Sometimes they become stronger because they stayed just active enough for their bodies to keep adapting. That's a very different way of thinking about aging. And perhaps the most encouraging one. Because it means the story isn't only about where you are today. It's also about the signal you continue sending tomorrow. Before we finish, I'd like you to revisit the simple chair observation from the beginning of this video. Not as a test, as a conversation. Every few weeks, use the same chair. Stand up the same way. Notice the details. Do you lean forward less? Do you hesitate less? Does the movement feel smoother? Small improvements often appear there before they become obvious anywhere else. But I promised one final discovery. And this may be the most important one of all. Scientists have learned that your body doesn't make long-term decisions based on one workout, one healthy meal, or one inactive afternoon. It watches for repetition. Every step you take, every time you stand instead of staying seated, every safe balance exercise, every walk to the mailbox, every trip through the grocery store. You're casting another vote. Not for tomorrow, for the months and years ahead. That's why missing one day rarely changes anything. And it's why beginning today can still matter far more than wishing you had started last year. Of course, none of this replaces medical care. If you've noticed sudden weakness, repeated falls, severe pain, numbness that's getting worse, or major changes in walking or balance, those deserve prompt medical evaluation. Sometimes the cause is straightforward. Sometimes it's something that can be treated. The important thing is not assuming every new symptom belongs to aging before asking the right questions. So before we say goodbye, I'd like to ask you something a little different. Don't think about next week. Think about 10 years from now. What do you hope your legs will still allow you to do? Walk beside someone you love. Travel without worrying about every staircase. Work in your garden on a spring morning. Play on the floor with your grandchildren. And stand back up with confidence. I'd genuinely love to read your answer in the comments. Because those goals matter far more than numbers on a fitness chart. They remind us why keeping our legs strong is worth the effort in the first place. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing. Every week we share practical, evidence-based strategies to help you stay active, independent, and confident for years to come. Thank you for spending this time with me. And I'd like to leave you with one thought that captures everything we've discussed today. Every step you take tomorrow is quietly teaching your body whether strong legs are still worth keeping. That's a lesson your body never stops listening to.